All right. See, that should be a Scottish voice. Can we change the voice on Zoom?
This meeting is being recorded.
Fascinating. Okay, Catherine, just to save me, can we do a roll call?
Yes. Sharon,
Here.
David Anderson,
Here.
Bill Appel,
Here.
Janet,
Here.
Kyle,
Here.
David Dellendorf, Paul Dossett. I see him. Jane,
Here.
Patty,
Here.
Tony,
Present.
Richard,
Here.
Liz,
Hi.
Robert,
Here.
Kevin, Olivia,
Here.
Maureen,
In honor of my relatives, top of the evening to y'all. I'm here.
Sharon, it's a darling day it is.
It is, it is.
Anne Marie,
Here.
and Tom.
All right. Who was missing?
David Dellendorf was not here.
And that's it. Okay. All right. So everybody get a chance to look at the minutes. Any questions, issues, concerns? If not, I'd take a motion to accept the minutes.
I move the minutes be
All
approved.
right, we got Dick and Maureen as a second. Any more discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? No? Okay, minutes pass. Okay, we also have notes from the town hall meetings. Thank you, Olivia and others, and Catherine for putting those together. We do not need to adopt those, but I just wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to look at them. And if there are any questions, you can raise them now or forever hold your peace. Okay, good. All right. I think that town halls went excellent. Thank you for all of you who were able to attend. I thought we got some great information. We'll get into that later on in the committee. For now, I want to dive directly into our presentations that we have today. We have two of our elected officials, and thank you both so much for taking time to be here and speak to us. We're excited to hear from you, hear about your position as well as your department and what you do for the county. And before I turn it over to John first, I want to thank you both for your service. It's not easy to be elected, and you guys not only are elected, but also are running departments, which do just really vital work for our community. So thank you so much. So with that, we'll begin with John. And if you could just maybe begin by introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, but then dive into your department.
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation tonight for sure to tell you a little bit about us. I have been in the office for, I think, 17 years. I started as an appraiser trainee and worked my way up to be accredited, and then what we consider a commercial appraiser, an appraiser 2 in San Juan County, then the chief deputy, and then ran for election when the last assessor retired. So there, I will just jump into the program here. How about that? Everybody see that?
Looks like the house I used to rent on San Juan Island.
It does, in fact. Took a snapshot of yours. Yeah, good. Okay. Well, so the assessors, let me first say though, it's hard, I've mentioned this before, but it's hard to reduce a year's worth of work of 10 people to a few minutes. And so I've tried to just hit some highlights, give you a sense of the function really more than the details and the procedures and that kind of thing. But when I say that, please ask questions now, some other time, anything that you want to know about, I'll certainly tell you about. But I tried to keep it down to a pretty tight outline just to keep it simple. There are two main things that the assessor's office does, and that's assign taxable value and determine levy rates. When we have those two pieces of information, then we pass that over to the treasurer's office, and that's the pie chart on the right side of the equal sign there in the picture, and for the collection of the taxes. And you see the distribution there among all the different taxing districts. I can tell you that for 2021, the tax to current expense was 7.3 million. To roads, it was 4.9 million. And the total to all of the taxing districts there was $63.6 million. This slide is, I suppose it's boring, but it's an outline of what probably everybody knows about the assessor's office. The real property, of course, is the main thing that everybody thinks about. We go out and we inspect and we appraise all the real property in the county. We spend a lot of time studying the sales to determine fair market value. And there are 4 people in the office that are dedicated to that. The chief deputy and myself spend a lot of time on the statistics and the sales study. So I think it's easy to say that half of the office is spent doing that one piece. There are special tax programs, of course. We have current use designated forest land, exemptions, and senior citizen and persons with disability. There is both an exemption and a deferral with that. And what those special programs do is they either reduce the assessed value, or I should say, and or the rate that you pay. And so that affects the market value that we initially assign. Then there's tax exempt property, anything that's government owned, federal, state, local, port property, land bank property, anything that a county entity owns is tax exempt. There also are properties that the Department of Revenue determines should not pay taxes. That's an annual application from the owner to the Department of Revenue. Most of those are nonprofit corporations that own property here. The one thing on this list that people probably don't know, or they know the least amount about, is business personal property. Washington taxes business personal property the same way they do real property. And I can tell you that comes as a surprise to some folks when we contact them and let them know that they need to be filing a list of their assets with us. We have half a person dedicated to inventorying and valuing those properties. I could go back and mention that for the current use, we have one person full-time doing those, and the other half of the business personal property person handles all the senior citizen and persons with disabilities. Then, one of the big things about assigning value and collecting taxes is to know who that person is. So we maintain current property tax records. Anytime there's a change in boundaries or ownership, we have to track that and have to track it, right now in real time. So we've got a cartographer that is full-time. That's one of his main responsibilities. Oh, excuse me. The annual valuation process, since 2012, we have been valuing the entire county, so all parcels every year. We used to be on a cyclical basis once every 3 years. We did that entire third of the county. We inspected them and valued them. But then because the market was pretty volatile back 2008, 2009, the state required every county to do it annually. And so we started in 2012, and that's for uniformity. And I think it's a really good thing. It changed our workload for sure. We now value 18,000 parcels and analyze sales countywide. And so something had to give, and it was that inspection cycle. And the law allowed us to reduce it to going once every 6 years instead of once every 3. So we're up against the maximum there. We're going around once every 6 years. We see about 3,000 parcels plus new construction countywide. And you can see there from the map, 2021, this year, we're inspecting the north end of San Juan and Henry, Pearl, Spiden, Stewart, and Johns. This workflow, the change in the workflow, having to analyze everything and assign values to every property has made us really dependent on statistics. And so we use several different programs. This one is our newest one that we're just getting into this year. And it is a very fancy program that helps us with multiple regression. We've been using a multiple regression analysis for several years, but this one is really fast and really detailed. You'll see, for anybody that is interested in the statistics, you see an R squared number up there. There are standard deviations. There's COVs, CODs, PRDs. All of those acronyms are just different measures of assessment level and assessment uniformity. And so we're really happy to have this. It should help us a lot. This is a picture of the current use, DF designated forest land and exempt properties. And the point of that is just to show you sort of the scope of those exempt programs. They're obviously, you can see all over the county. It affects 15% of the parcels and 47% of the area. If you look at some of those colors and areas, you can see Blakely, almost all of Blakely is covered by designated forest land. Spiden up there and Sperry Point, that little point off of Lopez, those are in open space. You can see the Roach Harbor designated forest land, American Camp, Moran. That's we manage all of those. The last step after we get our values and we figure out what's not being taxed is the due process. This is the last step of our valuation process. When we change values, we send out this notice. It's a change of value notice to the taxpayers, and there's a 30-day window for people to contact us. And we have a lot of conversations with a lot of people and work through things that they may think we have wrong. We try to educate them a lot about market value and the requirement that we be at 100% of market value. It's hard to have people accept that, but that's our mandate. And so we talk to a lot of folks, and we do find out things that we've done wrong. This is the accountability step for us, for the taxpayer. So I'm glad that we have it. I'm also glad it's only 30 days. At the end of, well, or during that 30 days, if we can't agree, there is an appeal right to the County Board of Equalization. They are completely independent of us, and they will schedule a hearing, and we go in and tell our story, and the taxpayer tells their story, and then the board will make a ruling. And if either side is not happy with the ruling, there is an option to appeal to the State Board of Tax Appeals. And if either party elects to stay on a formal path, you can go on to Superior Court. Generally, the Superior Court question is there's a legal issue. It's not so much an appraisal issue, but there's some kind of legal interpretation of statutes or something like that that gets pushed on to Superior Court. After those values are all certified, then the second major piece of our world is to determine the levy rates. There are 28 taxing districts and 33 levies this year. There are three of us in the office that spend a month doing this, and we do it independently, almost sequestered so that we don't influence each other. It's a very critical calculation. And so we separate ourselves and work through all the information and calculate out levy rates. And then we compare notes and try to find out. We work together until we all agree on them. You'll see in that right column, the tax year 2021 levy rate. We calculated out to 10 decimal places. So it's a really precise calculation, and we want to match actually to the 13th decimal, and then we report that, of course, onto the state. All of that that we do during the year, it's not done in a vacuum. It's not just whatever we think with no throwing a dart or any of that stuff. The Department of Revenue has oversight over us, and they give us annual progress. We give them progress reports annually, and then they let us know what they think of those reports. They do annual ratio audits. There are periodic audits of other special pieces. We have a levy audit every 3 or 4 years. We had a current use audit, I want to say in 2012. But they're always checking us, and that's certainly welcome, because if you're making a mistake, you want to know about it early. The picture in the upper right there that says county revaluation progress, I just put that in there because it's a very short letter from them, and those are always great to get. We hate the long ones because it means we've got a lot of work to do. But that one says, we commend your effort in completing the revaluation requirements as mandated. And we've gotten that letter 3 years in a row and are very happy about that. The lower section that we got last May, that's the most current ratio audit. The middle section is all of the statistics that they measure. The one that I'm most proud of, I suppose, is number 3. They talk about the PRD, the price related differential is 1.01. It can swing from 0.98 to 1.03. Actually, the Department of Revenue is trying to move to the VEI, the Vertical Equity Index. They say that it's more sensitive, and I think that it is. And they say that we had excellent vertical equity. What they're measuring there is the difference of high valued property, the assessment level of high valued property compared to the assessment level of low value property. And you'll hear talk about progressive and regressive taxes. It's important to be balanced and not be overtaxing lower valued stuff compared to higher valued stuff. And that is a difficult thing. It's especially difficult in San Juan County with some of the estates here that are just, I mean, unbelievable. It might be the only thing like it in the world, and trying to come up with the fair market value of that thing is a difficult thing. And so that's why I say that I'm really proud that we are dialed in on that measure of uniformity. The bottom line is the bottom line of that picture, and it says that San Juan County met or exceeded all IAAO standards. That's the International Association of Assessing Officers. And we've gotten a letter and a comment like that 3 out of the last 4 years. And that doesn't always happen. A lot of counties don't satisfy all of the standards, and we haven't every year, but we have 3 out of the last 4. Our goals and challenges. So the first thing is to maintain those high assessment standards. Second thing, I would like to reduce our inspection cycle. I mentioned the 6-year cycle that we're on. A lot of things can change over those 6 years. And I would really like to be able to get out more often and see houses. We can call depreciation a lot better when we see it in person, rather than just letting the program assume the depreciation over those intervening 5 years. So that's something that I would like to do. I'd like to increase our community outreach and education. We've got a really good website going on. A lot of people use it. I've had assessors call and say that they really like it, and they're they're adopting some of the things. Annie Minnick in the office does that. I can't take credit for it. She's doing a really great job. But I am talking about how other assessors have liked it. I want to keep that going and keep it current, keep it efficient, keep it informative. We also have a statement of assessments booklet. I will tell you that your own Paul Dossett started that back in the late 80s, and I can tell you that he spent his own money to produce that thing, and it is a fantastic booklet. I can also tell you that it's grown substantially. It's probably doubled in size. We continue to print that every year. My guru there, Annie, has put that up on the website, so there's an electronic version. But I think we pass out 100 of those booklets every year. So we want to keep that going. Some of the things we haven't been so successful with lately, presentations to civic groups. I've talked to a couple of groups on the island, a couple on Orcas. I've been to Waldron to talk about designated forest land. I firmly believe in outreach from the government, especially in a place like San Juan County that's so spread out. I think that the contact from the government, I think, is a really critical thing. And I haven't taken the time. We don't have the funding. We don't have the depth in the office to free myself up enough to get out and do that. But it's on this short list of goals and challenges. Similarly, the legislative agenda, every year the legislature meets, of course, and they start working on things. And there's a lot of pressure now to use the property tax system to fund things because funding is so tight. And there are things that the assessors can do and should do to educate that group. I have been down to Olympia once and talked to our representatives and our senator, but and our assessors group does it. And so I have a voice through them, but I also think that having more presence, more contact will help with some of those decisions, just with the education part of it. This is your 2021 assessor's office. There are 10 of us. There's the organizational chart. The oldest person is Richard. He's been in the office for about almost 19 years. He's an appraiser in the office. And the youngest is Marcella. She's been in the office for 4 days. So we've got our appraisers there. There's a lot of experience and a lot of newness. The rest of us range from between the 19 years and the 4 days. I can tell you, I'm really proud of them, and you should be too. They do a great job. They are very dedicated public servants, and you really ought to be proud of them as taxpayers. They're doing the right thing for you. So what questions can I answer? What did I leave out? Nothing.
John, I didn't
Okay.
realize I was
I'm
muted.
gonna
John, if you could stop sharing your screen. Then I could
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go to Bob O'Connell, and then Kyle, was that you as well?
Yes. John, I understand from what you said, if I've got this correct, that you came up through the ranks in the office. Is that right?
I did.
So you obviously coming up through the ranks, all of those people underneath the assessor, they're not elected, obviously. They're appointed by the assessor, I would assume. And then you came up to a place where the assessor's office was open and you decided to run for election. Is that right? Is that how it worked?
Yes, exactly right.
Can you tell us about the process, how you felt and how you feel now about the process of having to go through being elected as opposed to all of those years you were in appointed positions in the office?
Didn't want to beat around the bush, Bob, just straight to it, huh?
Should be. Yeah, always.
Yeah, sure. Stop me when you want because I've got a lot to say on it. But I'll try to keep it. Yeah, I'll try to keep it simple. I can tell you, it would be a lot easier to be appointed, a lot easier. Going through an election is a marathon job interview, and it can be expensive. The filing fee is almost $1,000. If you have an opponent, it just goes up from there. And then you get the privilege of having another job interview 4 years down the road, regardless of how well you did. It ends. Now, having said all of that, I believe that the election process is proper, and I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, I think that the assessor's relationship is with the taxpayer. It is not with the county manager. It's not with the county council.
Yep.
I think that the assessor has to have. There's a lot of independent judgment that's got to be exercised. You've got to interpret statutes. You've got to read advisories. You've got to talk to other counties. I think that having that independent judgment is a critical piece to appraising property for tax purposes. I've mentioned this before, there's a public trust out there with something like this. And I think that really needs to be respected. Okay, here's the soapbox, and I'll get off of this quickly. There was a major decision for me to run for election because of the salary. There was a point in time, so this is my 6th year, and there was a point in time where my chief deputy was making more than I was. And I had a couple of sleepless nights and decided at the end of those nights that I really liked the job. I wasn't going to stop coming into the office. And so I just continued to do the job. But the point is that I'm not sure that everyone would make that decision. It would have been easier to stay the chief appraiser at that time. I have changed the position to a chief deputy. It would have been easier to stay there and just train someone that came in to run for assessor. So there you go. I'll get off the soapbox.
John, thank you for that. We've got several more questions, I'm sure, but
Of course.
I just wanted to, I was just going to say, we've got time. And so I appreciate you taking the time to answer that thoughtfully and really speak from your heart. And on any of these questions, please take the time you need.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Kyle, and then Tom Starr, and then Maureen C.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John, for being here with us today. You sort of answered this after I wrote it, but in the chat I had just asked. So if we go to once every 6 years for a sixth of the county, I'm not sure I understand all of this properly, but if you rotate in that way and we have a fairly substantial economic boom year in real estate, like last year, this year, is there some risk that the county misses out on tax money? I suppose the opposite could be argued when we have a 2008, for instance. But and then you said, well, if you had your druthers, you'd go out and see buildings and so forth more often. Where's the balance? And are we missing out by not having more staff?
There's multiple layers to that. We're not missing out at the moment. What we would miss out on is new construction. So as new buildings are built, we go out and we inspect those, and we're allowed to add the value of that new construction to the tax roll, and all the new construction dollars add up, and that allows the taxing districts to increase their budgets based on on what the theory is, that there's more infrastructure, more things required of the fire department, for instance. The county's got to provide more services to more homes, that kind of thing. So there's a 1% limit on the growth of all of those budgets, but the value of new construction allows a little bit more than that 1%. So we don't miss out in that sense. The risk that we run is if we get too far behind, then that is one of very few things that we're not mandated to do. We're mandated to value, we're mandated to calculate levy rates, all of those things. We don't have to see the new construction. It would be a horrible decision to make, but if we had no time, that is the thing that would fall off the table. Okay, so let me go back to your 6-year question. So we value every property every year. So as the market moves up or down, we adjust the entire county. The 6-year cycle is just the inspection. So we only go out and look at 1/6 of the county and we roll through, but it doesn't change. That's all we're doing, is we're updating our records with
I
that
see.
1/6.
Thank you.
Right.
I
Yep.
missed that point.
Yep,
That
great. Okay.
squares it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Welcome.
Tom Starr.
Hi, John. Welcome, and thanks for coming to
Thanks, Tom.
Lions Club last year when we could do that.
You're very welcome.
You explained this at Lions Club, and I know it could go on rather long, but in a 1-minute short dissertation, how does the computer do it?
Oh, the less than a minute answer is I don't know. It is it's multiple. How do I explain this in a minute or less? So multiple regression, what that does is it allows, we put in the sale prices and we tell the computer what was purchased in each one of those sales. So very simple answer or example, one house had a pool. So we let the computer know that one had a pool. This other one had a horse stable and this other one had a 3-car garage, and everything else is equal. What the multiple regression analysis does is it finds the difference in value related to those different variables. So at the end of the day, when you push go, the thing spits out at the end, a pool added this much to that sale price, the stables added this much, and the 3-car garage added this much. And so we get enough sales. If we're lucky, we have 500 sales, and we do that enough times that we can dial in what those variables add to the sale price. Did that do it?
Well, you kept it within a minute. I'll grant you that.
All right.
That raises the uniqueness of some of our homes and estates here. I remember I went to a dinner on San Juan Island once, and there was a woman talking about how she had spent $142,000 on her hearth, and it was pure crystals. Wow. Maybe you've seen it, but the entire thing is crystals that they brought over from, I think, Egypt or someplace crazy. And when there's a fire in it, it reflects crazy light everywhere. And when you were speaking, I was like, how do you assess that?
Well, first of all, tell me the address.
So Maureen C.
Oh, thank you, John. This is
Sure.
really, really helpful. I have a couple of questions. They're a little bit different, but a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, your predecessor engaged the county in a pretty difficult situation over the land uses for open space and ag, and there were some pretty upset farmers, and people got pulled out of programs that they'd been in for years, feeling that they weren't fulfilling what they were supposed to. Is that all smoothed over? And are you satisfied with how that ended? Or is it still going on?
It is difficult to pull somebody out of a special tax program. So there are some people that are probably not happy with us, but I am absolutely satisfied with the way we're doing business. So the thing about those special tax programs is as you, if one person at the table gets a discount on their taxes, because of the way Washington taxes work, everybody else is going to pick up what is not being paid. It gets redistributed out to everyone else. So I take that as a mandate to represent all of the other taxpayers when I look to see if one of those exceptions, if they're following the rules. Because it's a state program. The state has said, we're going to give you a tax break if you do these things.
Mhm, mhm.
When those things are very clear, it's easy. Nobody's upset one way or the other. It's when those requirements are vague that's where that independent judgment is coming in, and we have to make decisions to find out to decide if people are following the rules or not. If the rule's gray, then there actually is a statute out there that says whatever the assessor thinks. That's the bottom line. If you can't figure it out, it's whatever the assessor thinks. Well, that doesn't help a lot. So the way we do it is consistency is the key. Whether it's your best friend or your worst enemy, you got to treat them all the same. And we have to interpret those statutes the best that we can. The problem that we're talking about is farms that are over 20 acres. All they have to do is show that they are intending to make a profit. Well, how do you prove somebody's intent to make a profit?
Mhm.
And the assessor at the time came up with a bright line standard that was easy to measure, and that wasn't in the law. There isn't a bright line. So the Department of Revenue said, you can't do that. It's a great idea. We know why you're doing it, but you can't do it. It's not in the law. So
Yeah.
we of course don't do that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I may, a second part, it's not the same question, but a different one. Our understanding is that your salaries are set by the Citizen Salary Commission, and
Yes.
that is for all electeds.
Yes.
I'm part of an operations committee here, and it's quite obvious that there's a great disparity between what the appointeds are getting and what the electeds are getting. How do you feel about that? Do you think the Citizen Salary Commission is doing the right thing?
No, I don't. So you're touching a nerve for me. It's difficult for me to go over there and put my hand out and say, you're not paying me enough to do the job.
Mhm.
That's a really hard thing to do. But I spur myself because I know that I tell myself that I'm representing the next person that's coming into the office, whenever they are. The thing that is so frustrating to me is I have watched the relationship between the salaries of department heads and the salaries of elected officials diverge dramatically over the
Yes,
last several years.
yes.
And I've gone in and told them what I think. I try to help educate them with my frustration. I hope in a professional and polite way. And I have to say that most recently, they've come up with a different way of measuring it. And I remember one of the commission members said, wow, that's a big difference. And the reaction was not, wow, we need to fix it, but wow, that's going to be too expensive.
For the county.
Yes. And my reaction is, yeah, wow.
Mhm.
So
Understood.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll shut up. Thank you for the question, though.
Did you have to cut people this year in your department?
We did not. I cut everything else. I cut training. We stopped flying. We started taking the ferry for free. I cut everything that I could,
Okay.
not cut people. Now, Mylene will tell you that I didn't get where I was supposed to, but we can't cut any people. We're stretched too thin.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
sure.
John, thank you for your candor. It's,
Well, you're welcome, of course.
and it just underscores why your service is so valuable. I clarified this in the chat, but it was asked who makes more appointed versus elected. And I was saying that the appointed are making more, appointed department heads are making more. So I believe Olivia had a question, and then Jane.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, John.
Oh, you're welcome. Of course. Thank you.
I have actually wanted to ask you this question for years, so I'm really excited to discuss this. And I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat, just to be very clear. It's just really valuable for me as a commissioner, and also for my 9-to-5 job. So do counties have standards for the sales analysis and the values used, or is it more up to the assessor and their independent input in a county like ours where completing a comp is almost impossible? So I saw the sales analysis that you were presenting, and I saw a bunch of data of how it's calculated. And I manage a bank, and so we are, constantly looking at taxed, assessed value versus market value. And it's hard to complete a comp. And when we have a comp come through, say for a mortgage refi or purchase, I laugh at the comparables, because I'm like, how is this a comparable? There's a home with, more bedrooms, etc. So my question is based off of the values that you put in that sales analysis. Is that something that's a county standard for all of Washington, a state standard, or is it more based off of the input from the assessor who's physically going to the home?
Yeah. Are you talking about the numbers that go into the refi appraisals you're seeing?
No, yours specifically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So let me just start off with the old joke, and that is, if you get 10 appraisers in the room, you're going to get 11 opinions of value. And the point of that is that its market value is a range. And so, there isn't a number, like a house isn't worth a number, but we're charged with putting a number on our records. So when you look at different appraisals and different comps that are used, you have to remember the purpose of the paperwork. Refinancing is a completely different purpose. So what we do is we assign a value to every property. And our 2021 value, right now we're working on an appraisal date of January 1st of 2021. We look at all of the sales that occurred from January 1st of 2020 to December 31st of 2020. So we have a pool of 12 months worth of sales. And the first thing we do is we figure out which ones are market and which ones aren't. If it was an arm's length transaction, that purchase price was negotiated over an arm's length transaction, or negotiation, then that's a good one. That we put that on one side. If it was between family members or any kind of duress, we put that in another pile. Okay, and that's not state law. It's just appraisal practice, because our standard is 100% of fair market value, and the definition of fair market is the arm's length transaction. Okay, so then we have that pool of sales, and we put them in Excel. We just list them in Excel, and we try to do that multiple regression I was talking about. Obviously, the stuff that it's location, whether you're talking about time or physical place. That's what is going to make a comparable property. And so we put those together, and that's what drives value for any one piece. Okay, one more piece and then I'll shut up. That when a taxpayer appeals our value and we have to go in and defend it, rather than say, here are our 500 sales and it's showing that we were generally 10% low or 20% low in this one area, we think that it's more helpful to point out particular houses. And so those become our comps, but we don't use those that way. We don't use them as, I should say, we don't necessarily use those. You know, we don't have a list of 3 comparables for every property. Maybe that's a better way to say it. We generate that in response to an appeal, and we say, well, is our assessed value supported by the sales? And then we look to see things that are similar, and if we find them, we say, yep, here we go. Those are our comparable properties. If they're not there, then we have to do a gut check and find out if we made a mistake or something. Did that answer your question?
Kind of. So
Yeah, I'm
just
sorry.
to get a
then
little
Dick.
bit more clarity, you know, I have this conversation quite often with people, and if we think 10 years in the future, because that's what our, you know, commission is tasked to do, we think about the charter 10 years in the future. And at the rate that we're going for assessed value and purchase price, I personally will be taxed out of this jurisdiction, this district, and will be forced to move. So this is purely based off of sales, and if we have real estate agents who are pumping value and then sales, and the calculation is based off of that specifically for your office to evaluate, is there a cap?
Yeah, okay, so this is one of the things that I really want to educate more people on. Because it's a misunderstanding in the way the taxes work in Washington. There's no cap on value. The first part of our function is to set market value. So it's the value of a house is whatever the market says it is. If people are coming in and they're paying more and more and more money, then we're supposed to reflect that. We're supposed to be at 100% of that. Okay, so we do all of that first, and then we set that completely aside. The next part of the equation is the budgets for each of the taxing districts. That's where the limit comes in. Those budgets are only allowed to grow a little tiny bit. So the current expense, the county can't go out and say, we want, you know, whatever amount of money we want. That's where the cap is. So you funnel all of these assessed values, whatever they are, high, low, whatever they are, through this control of a levy amount that can only grow a certain amount. So if the assessed values go way up, the levy rate is going to shrink way down. And if the assessed values go way down, the levy rate is going to increase, because you want to end up on the other side of the equal sign with a budget that has gone up 1% from last year. So the thing that I always say that I lose everybody right here, but I'm pretty sure I learned this from Paul, is we could cut assessed values in half, and your taxes at the end of the day would be exactly the same. So your house, all the houses are worth $1 million, and we get a levy rate, and we get a tax at the end. If we cut all the values in half, so now everybody's house is only worth $500,000, the levy rate is going to go up so that you get the same amount of taxes at the end. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank
We're
you.
going to go to Jane and then Dick.
Yeah.
Thanks. And thanks very much, John. This is, it's nice to
Sure,
meet the assessor. I think I voted for you. No.
thank you.
I'm on Lopez Island. So yeah, this has been super helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, just a quick question. You know, there is a degradation of land that's happening. I happen to live in a cove on the water, which my parents had built further back. They didn't. Our next door neighbor, his bank is seriously compromised by the bank we live on, and he's even closer to the bank than we are. And so I'm just, you know, how does the assessor factor the fact that, you know, your house is getting close to falling into the water? Like,
Yep.
I'm just, because again, to Olivia's point, we're looking out 10 years, right? And so, you know, just curious to know,
Yep.
you guys might think about that too in your work. So I'm interested in your
Yep.
thoughts.
Yeah, we do. And that's a tough question. The real answer is if we have a place that sells where that's happening, then that's our gold standard. We know how that affects the market price. So ideally, you have two properties that are exactly the same. One has the degradation and one doesn't, and they sell on exactly the same day. That's what tells us what that deduction should be. But it's also important to remember that our value is today. Well, actually, it's January 1st of the assessment year. So it's back in time and it's using a previous year's sales. So we're using historical values to set a value to be used for the following year's taxes. So 10 years down the road, if the degradation continues, that's going to be more and more and more of an impact as you move forward. But that's part of the art of appraisal, is how much is that affecting the house? One way to look at it is if the house is worthless, what is it going to cost to build a new one that is further back? And if that's whatever dollar amount that is, you subtract that's we're substituting a new house. So that's a long conversation. I'm happy to talk to you though, anytime you want.
A
Yeah.
friend of mine who worked on assessments in Santa Monica, California, told me about the houses on the Gold Coast, that there's no impact to their assessment until there's an impact to their assessment.
Yeah.
He said that happened when literally the house fell onto the Pacific Coast Highway. He was like, then there's an impact. Okay, next, Dick.
Yeah, John, do you know if there are minimum qualifications for the members of the Citizen Tax or Citizen Salary Commission?
I don't. I know that some of them, there are certain positions that have to have qualifications. I know there's a lawyer, there's an accountant. I'm speaking out of turn.
Okay.
I think there's also a distribution. I think some have to be from certain islands, some residency. Other than that, I don't know.
And a second question, did I hear you correctly to say that 47% of the acreage in the county is in some kind of exempt status?
Yes,
So
it's in some kind of discount.
Yes, discount status. Yep. So I hear people who, and it surprises me, some of the people I hear it coming from, talk about, you know, the negative impact the land bank has on the rest of us in terms of taxes. And yet, if 47% of the acreage is in some kind of discount, isn't that having a much bigger impact on the rest of us than the land bank?
Sure. Yeah. Although the land bank is included in that number.
Right. I understand that.
It does. Sure. It has an impact. Every property that comes off of the tax roll, or that the assessed value is not as high as it might otherwise be, it will push that amount of taxes out to the rest of us. But, you know, so here's my soapbox. I think we need to decide what kind of a community we want to live in. And that's what the democratic process is about. If we don't want to support farms or land bank or government owning property, then then we need to change that. Right now, the law is that certain things get a discount for public policy purposes. Certain things get a discount, certain things are tax exempt, and all we do in this office is follow the law.
Liz, you're going to get the last question.
So, John, is there a disparity between the amount of revenue, tax revenue generated by a resident and the cost of that resident joining us?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know how you would answer that. You would have to decide what the value of having a fire truck and a sheriff's deputy on standby is, among other things. What is that value? I don't know the answer to that.
I had just seen somewhere that there was a disparity between the two and that it costs more to have someone join our community than and I was wondering how they came up with that.
Yeah.
But I thought if we continue to grow and there is a disparity, then that's just going to be a multiplier effect in terms of impacts.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that. It's a great economic question though.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's been a great presentation.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I rambled on so much about some of this.
No,
I don't think you did at all, John. I think this is really informative. And just thank you for taking the time.
Of course. Thank you for
Also,
the
by
invitation.
way, if you ever want a new job, you could be a DJ. You've got that kind of like
smoky.
Yeah, great. Well,
Anyway.
I'll stay on if you have questions afterwards or anytime. Call me, email me. I'm happy to try to help explain it.
Well, John, just thank you. Thank you very
Sure.
much.
Yeah.
for your
Thank
service.
you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Thanks. All right.
Okay, we're going to go to Rhonda a couple minutes later, but we're still okay. But very quickly, Mylene, put in the chat. Are you there, Mylene?
Yes.
Could you quickly tell us how the Salary Commission is appointed?
Yeah, it can be quick. There are 4 positions that are professional in nature. They have to have legal experience, labor experience, personnel experience, and business experience. And those positions are filled by the HR manager. And yes, they have to have experience in those areas. It can actually be kind of hard to fill them. We went for a long time without someone with the personnel experience because we couldn't find a person with the relevant experience who was willing to do it. The other 6 positions are what I refer to as the random positions. And those are distributed evenly among the council districts. When we had 6 council members, there was 1 per district. Now that we have 3 council districts, there are 2 per district. When one of those people's terms run out or they choose to leave early, I am notified of that by the HR manager, and I send out, and what I do is my election staff, and this is why it's the auditors, because we use elections data, because they do have to be registered voters. They send me information. She will generate a list for me, a randomized list of voters in that area. So basically using a simple random number generator and the voter roll, she'll send me a list. I take the top 10 names. This is my process. It's not the way it has to be, but I send out letters to 10 people. Only about 1 in 10, and sometimes less than that, will actually respond to a letter, which I find fascinating. But if I don't get someone in the first group, I will send out another 10 letters. But basically, that is a completely random selection, random among registered voters in the county. And the first person to say yes gets the job. They cannot be related to a person who works for the county, and of course cannot work for the county themselves. Questions?
No, more random than we thought.
Totally random.
Jane, you put something in chat. I really want to get to Rhonda though, but are any of those professional members paid? Are there any
No,
stipends for the salary commission?
There is a nominal $15 stipend, which I think is in charter. But typically, it is often waived by the members. I won't say typically, but the members often waive that. We will also pay travel expenses if they request it, but many do not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on with our agenda at this point. If we have more questions on this, Mylene has been religiously spending time with us at most of our meetings, so we can circle back with her. But we have Rhonda Peterson, and Rhonda, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for taking time to be here today. Rhonda is our treasurer, and she's going to go over her department and her elected position. And Rhonda, the floor is yours, and thank you again.
All right, thank you. So let's see. And I got to figure out which screen to share here. I think that's the screen.
Great picture.
Are you seeing my desktop?
Yeah, we're seeing there you go.
Okay. All right. So this is the presentation that I used for presenting to the council. And I just thought I would go ahead and use the same one. I talked about the overview of our department and what we do. So thank you for inviting me here today. So I thought I would give you a little bit of background about our office. Before 2009, there were 5 employees counting the treasurer's office, or counting the treasurer. And in 2009, there were several budget cuts. So one of the positions, someone had passed away and that position was not filled. And then in 2012, another position was split in half, and they worked half-time in the treasurer's office and half-time in the assessor's office. And then in 2015, when I became the treasurer, that half-time position was reinstated. So there are now 4 of us in the office. But when they had those budget cuts and reduction of staff, that meant that the treasurer herself had to take on all those duties because like many offices, we have mandated duties that need to be done. So she took on a lot of those duties. So our office now is, we have a chief deputy treasurer that I believe before 2020, this position was classified as a chief deputy treasurer. But the person that did it before was never really did the full function of the job. So we now have a chief deputy in our office for the first time. And then we have the accountant foreclosure deputy and the chief deputy, or sorry, cashier financial deputy. So this picture was before COVID and before the early retirement incentive that was offered at the beginning of the pandemic. On the left is Tina Tileman, who is our main cashiering and REIT person. She came to our office about 2.5 years ago. She previously worked at the EMS in their admin department, and she was familiar with our software financial system, which is Eden. She monitors our bank account and receipts in all the revenue, and she also processes the REITs that are either delivered to our front counter or through the mail and at the electronically. So we also, like the auditor's office, accept electronic documents. Then is Kim Cox. She was our foreclosure deputy, and she left in August of last year. And then is Kim Burns, who took the early retirement incentive, and she left in June. And then myself. So I started in the health department back in 2010. So I've been with the county for about 20 years. And I worked in the health department for about 6 months and then transferred to the auditor's office I worked in the Department of Licensing. I worked in recording. I did the AP processing for the junior districts or special purpose districts. And then I did the GL accountant. So this is Oscar Rivera. He is our Chief Deputy Treasurer. I originally hired Oscar in June of 2016. And in 2017, he decided to take a job in the assessor's office as the appraiser. And then June of last year, when Kim retired, he applied for the chief deputy position. So he comes back to our office with the knowledge from the assessor's side, and he is working on his skills, building his skills on the treasurer's side. It's great having him in here to have that understanding, kind of like the full scope of the assessor side and the treasurer side. This is Carrie Musburger. She replaced Kimberly Cox. She came to our office from Islanders Bank, which is now Banner Bank. She brings a lot of her banking and training skills to our office and her great customer service skills. This position wears many hats. She works with the properties owners that are facing foreclosure. She does receipting of property taxes. She prepares monthly reports and for the state agencies and she takes on many other tasks. So the treasurer's office acts as the banker on behalf of the county, and we hold a key position of public trust in the financial affairs of local government. We are also the ex officio for special purpose districts like the fire, EMS, hospital, library, water, and school districts. Some of our main responsibilities are investment and debt management, receipting and accounting, funds collection, disbursements, and tax statement preparation. So we work with 4 different systems in our office. We use Eden, which is our financial system. We use Tyler Cashiering, where we do our receipting of our daily revenues, and that's kind of integrated with Eden. Then we use CIC, which is a Treasury Cash and Investments, and PAX, which is our Property and Assessment Collection. So cash and investments, we manage all county, special purpose districts, and school district funds to make sure that that they are not operating in a negative cash balance. And the treasurer is authorized by statute to invest invest in funds or take the investments that are not needed for immediate expenditures, and we hold those in a fund that's called residual cash. We also invest for the special purpose districts based on the information that they give us. And we invest in the LGIP, which is Local Government Investment Pool, and we also purchase securities. So this chart is from one of our finance committee meetings. The finance committee meets quarterly to discuss how the funds are being invested, and also looking at if there's any interfund loans or interagency loans that may need to be discussed. I think the finance committee is allowed to authorize up to $10,000, and if it's more than that, then it has to be approved by council. And we also take that information to council if there's, let's say, East Sound Sewer Water District needs to borrow funds from us, and then we discuss it amongst our finance committee, and then we make our recommendation to council, and we take it to council for their final approval on it. So this chart is from the LGIP showing what our balance was at the end of 2020, and of the 52 million, the county, all except the residual cash funds, this is what we hold in the LGIP investment pool. So it's got all county funds, residual cash, school districts, and special purpose districts. This chart shows what we've invested with our securities through the end of 2020. We are currently working with 3 brokers, TVI, Piper Jaffray, and Stifel. And this was out of the 25 million, this is the portion that is held by these 3 different brokers. This chart shows the investments that are held in LGIP and securities for all funds through the end of December. So we do debt and management. We manage all the bonds and long-term debt payments for the county and special purpose districts and school districts. We make monthly payments, bond payments, and semi-annual bond payments. And we coordinate any county bond sales. So if the county goes out for a bond, there's a lot of work that goes into that process. We meet with bond counsel, bond advisors, county manager, and then we put together required information that's needed for that bond sale. We manage all inter-fund and inter-agency loans and make those payments on behalf of the district or the fund. And then we also record those principal payments in Eden to make sure we keep track of what the outstanding debt is. So receipting and accounting of revenue. We bill and collect revenue for all special assessments, noxious weed, fire patrol, clean water, and conservation district. We are currently recording electronic REITs. We receive the document electronically, but we've been recording this manually into PACS, which is our software provider for receipting in REITs and tax statements. Tina's been testing with our PACS and our e-REIT vendor to be able to import this information into PACS, and we're hoping to be up and running with that soon. Kind of looked at that as far as wanting to import it. So if we were in a situation where with COVID where we had to work remotely, that would be a process that we could actually be able to import and not have to have that physical document in our hands to be able to do that. And it'll reduce our time as far as data entry. And then we also collect and remit sales and use tax to DOR on a monthly basis for all funds. So we collect property taxes and special assessments. When the governor declared a state of emergency, there's statute that allows us to work with taxpayers, like either extending the property tax due date or setting up payment plans. And at the beginning of the pandemic last year, we worked hard to develop a plan on how we could help taxpayers and also be mindful of the cash flow of the county and the taxing districts, like fire, EMS, hospitals, school districts, who depend on those tax dollars to continue to operate. We scrambled together to put together a payment plan to help those that were in need and still be able to collect tax dollars. And as you can see by the chart, I looked at 2018 through 2020 to compare what our collection rate is. And even through the pandemic, we were able to keep on track with what we had done in prior years. We also collect lodging and sales tax. Some of the revenue this chart shows that what we've collected for the lodging tax and compared it from 2019 to 2020, and we were down about 34%. We keep track of it per island. I didn't figure out the difference between how it was for each island, but I did a total of what the loss of revenue was. And then also sales tax, comparing it 2019 to 2020, we were down about 2%. So bank reconciliation, we're responsible for receiving all revenue that has been deposited at the bank and for all the districts. That also includes like any REIT dollars, state apportionment, and any federal dollars that are deposited in our bank account. This is a spreadsheet that we take. We take the information from the bank and download it into the spreadsheet. So like on the right-hand side, this shows what is the activity that's happened at the bank, and it's put into an Excel sheet. It's formatted by day and by debits and credits, deposits and expenditures that go out, and it's put into that spreadsheet. And then on the left-hand side of that spreadsheet, we take that same month and we download it into the same Excel worksheet and sort it by day and by, these are called doc source codes in this column, and compare that to what's at the bank. And making sure that what happened at the bank is also what happened in the general ledger. And then when we find discrepancies, the bottom of this spreadsheet, we fill in, we balance it to the bank statement. So this portion here is the information from the bank statement. And then on the right-hand side is information from the general ledger, and we balance those out. If there's discrepancies, we fill them all out in the bottom portion here, and then determine what needs to happen. Was there something that was entered in the general ledger that didn't happen at the bank? Was there something that happened at the bank that didn't happen in the general ledger? And then we make those journal entries to correct that activity. So disbursement of funds. We redeem all warrants that have been issued by the county and special purpose districts, school districts. Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan school districts issued their own warrants. So we import that information of their invoices and their warrant activity into Eden, and then we redeem those warrants once they've cleared the bank. With the new bank merger from Islanders Bank to Banner Bank, we started using what's called positive pay. We send a file each evening of the warrants that have been issued, and then we send that information to the bank. And then each morning we review those warrants at the bank, and if there's anything that's in question, then we'll decide whether we're going to go ahead and pay that warrant, or if we think it's fraudulent, then we will not pay that warrant. So this was different than how we'd processed it before, and it is will help us with any fraudulent activity that may happen on our bank account. We prepare reports and we submit those funds to on a monthly basis to DNR, which is Fire Patrol or Department of Natural Resources, the Town of Friday Harbor, Conservation District, and other state agencies. And we also collect and disperse all funds for revenue and for all funds. So the annual report to State Auditor's Office. When I worked in the Auditor's Office, that was one of my jobs as a GL accountant. I prepared all the reports and submitted that to the State Auditor's Office. And then when I became the treasurer in 2015, I no longer prepared those reports. Then in 2016, there were some changes in the Auditor's Office, some changes in our office, and it made more sense for our office to go ahead and prepare Schedule 9, which is the schedule of liabilities. So our office makes all the long-term debt payments, and we have all the amortization schedules. So we prepare most of that report, and then when we've finished our portion and done our auditing part on it, we go ahead and send it over to the Auditor's Office to finish the remainder of that report, and they also verify that information against the general ledger, making sure everything is reported correctly. Schedule 6, which is a new schedule that we started preparing last year, and this is a summary of bank accounts, and the treasurer's part of it takes all the different banks, put it on an Excel sheet, and list all the different bank accounts that we have, and we look at the flow between those bank accounts. So there's some departments that have their own account where they're receipting in their revenue, and they then deposit some of that with the treasurer's office. So we have to, with the treasurer's main bank account. So we have to track that flow between all the different bank accounts. And then when we finished our portion of that, we send that over to the Auditor's Office, and they compare that to what is held in the general ledger. And then they submit all the reports to the State Auditor's Office. I report investment activity as prescribed by the State Auditor's Office, and I send that information to Mylene for her to add to the notes section of the annual report. So tax statement preparation happens once a year. So this is an example of the tax statements, what they look like this year. And they are called owner statements. And if you own more than one piece of property, this statement will hold up to 4 pieces of property. So if you own more than one, it'll list them on this tax statement. And if you own more than 4, then you will obviously get several pages of your properties listed on them. So our goal each year is to have tax statements in the mail by Valentine's Day. This year, we had several problems with our software and had to work with them to fix some information in there. It was actually our data file that we were having issues with. The taxes that came across from the assessor's office when they sent us their file, those all transferred across correctly. Information on our website was correct. It was just that data file that we were having issues with. So there are about 13 counties in the state of Washington that use PACS, and there's also several counties that use the same printer that we use to print those statements. So once John has certified the levy on his side, we try to work as fast as we can so we can get that information processed in our system so we can get our spot in the queue so we can get our tax statements out there timely. So a few years ago, we offered the ability to receive your tax statement electronically, which is called e-notices. On the tax statements, there's on the top part, it's like right below the distribution summary area where it will show that secure code. And then if you sign up for that, then you will also receive your valuation of notice electronically as well. The assessor's office and I worked together with e-notices to have that set up a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So we also process property tax cancellations and supplements. What that means is when a property goes in and out of programs throughout the year, like senior program or current use program, this property is supplemented, and we either will refund the taxpayer or we will send out a corrected tax statement depending upon what's happening with that property. And these properties go in and out of these all year long. We also send out tax statements weekly to new property owners. So when the REITs are being processed every day, we send out we just have it standard every day or every week that we will send out those new owners of properties tax statement. This is a tax statement we use this year for what's called auto pay, agent, foreclosure, and distraint. So this was new for us this year. In the past, we've always printed those in-house. So this year we decided to set it up with our printer so the statement's a little different looking than what our owner tax statements are. Auto pay is where you can sign up to have your tax payment made automatically from your bank account. If you look in your tax statements, you will probably see a little auto pay form in there. And then we also use this for foreclosure and distraint. These notices we printed with a yellow background, and then just so we can tell the difference between, what our regular statements are and what properties are actually in foreclosure. It catches your eye very easy. And then we also have like the return envelopes have like a little yellow border on them this year, and that also helps identify those payments when they come in the mail. So we work with taxpayers that are facing foreclosure. This is part of Carrie's job to work with delinquent property owners. Properties that are a full 3 or more years are delinquent is what could potentially face foreclosure. So our office works very closely with these individuals, and if they're not able to make their oldest tax years, we'll work with them and put them on payment plans. The distraint is similar to foreclosure, but it is for personal property. So the process for working through foreclosures is about a 6-month process once we've filed the certificate of delinquency with the Superior Court. There are statutory guidelines that we must follow, and if we miss any of those steps along the way, we make sure that we'll pull that property from the foreclosure list just to avoid any legal actions against the county, or we may delay the foreclosure until a later date. And we also work very closely with the prosecuting attorney's office as we're going through this process. A few years ago, legislation allowed us to hold our foreclosure auctions online, and we are in the process of looking for a vendor that we could work with to hold those foreclosure and foreclosure sales online. So I know that there's been conversations about combining offices, so I did a little research. Of the 39 counties in Washington state, there's only one county that has an elected office combined. Pierce County has an elected assessor treasurer, and King County has an appointed treasurer. So I called and talked to the Pierce County assessor, and when I was talking to him, I wanted to find out what his role looked like. And what duties does his office perform? What does it look like the auditor's, the auditor's office perform? Which led us to the finance department. So even though he is an assessor treasurer, he does not perform any treasury duties. He assesses properties, he levies for properties, he does prepare tax statements, he does collect property taxes through a lockbox PO box, and he processes the foreclosures, but he does not perform any investments or collect any of the other revenue for the county. The auditor's office is an elected position, and they manage the elections office. They process DOL, recording, and passports. And their auditor does receive the REITs. And when they're done recording the document, they send the excise tax notification to the assessors, where they, with the new ownership name and address to his office, where they'll update the property record in his system. And there's very few county auditors that actually record the REITs. The finance department is the one that actually is an appointed position, and they act as the treasurer. They collect and disperse the revenue. They disperse tax payments that the assessor collects. They process AP. They also do the personal property distraint, and they perform auditing duties. So even though the assessor and treasurer offices have been combined, they still have a separate office that performs the treasurer duties. So basically, it's in name only. And that's all I have. So I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Rhonda, thank you so much for presenting. If you could stop sharing, then we could see everybody again.
Yep, I think I quit. What are you still seeing my presentation?
Yeah.
Your desktop.
There you go. Okay, so I think Olivia has first question, and we're going to spend about 5-8 minutes on questions, and then try and get going too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing and also for doing that research independently. I appreciate it, Rhonda. That'll help us in our deliberations to talk about the questions more thoroughly. So my question is based for Corey's position as someone who focuses on foreclosures. If the process right now is not online, where do you look for information on foreclosed properties? So say if you're worried that your home is, going into foreclosure, do you call your office? What does that process look like? Because one thing that we are doing is we're discussing public records, and making that available for people. So with things not being online right now as an option, how do you get a hold of a list of homes that are, foreclosing? How do you find out if your home, has that issue? I would hope that a homeowner would know, but where do we find that information?
Well, you're right. We do work with the individuals. I mean, like once after April payments have been made, we start pulling our list to look for all the properties that are foreclosure. We start calling them. We send out, when we send out our tax statements, our original tax statements. So their first statement that they'll get has a letter in there. It talks about the process, what they need to do, what their tax amount is due. If they don't make those payment by the end of April, then we start calling them. We pull our list, we start calling them, we have contact with them. If we can't reach them by phone, we're sending them information through the mail. So there's a lot of contact with these people throughout the whole process, even though it's not online at this time. And that would only be when we were actually, after we filed our certificate of delinquency with Superior Court. And there's very strict RCWs that we have to follow. And like I say, if those aren't followed at any point in the time, we open that up for, the county, a liability for the county. So we make sure that we're following those. And if we miss one step along the way, we won't foreclose on that for any reason. So it's out there. It's, we would, once we go through that, when there is an actual auction, then we also have to take a process server and go out and notify that property owner. I think we have to put something on their property. We have to have like a, document that says that it's being up for foreclosure. So, yeah.
We got Bob and then Tom and then Janet.
Rhonda, thank you very much for coming and talking to us here. It's been very informative. It sounds like that you have employees who have worked for the assessor's office. You yourself worked for the auditor's office, if I've got that correct. Are there people working in those two offices, the assessor's office and the auditor's office, who are former employees of the treasurer's office? Do you know?
No.
There aren't?
No.
Would
not
you
that
say,
I know, not that I'm aware of.
I'm wondering if how would you assess the mobility, and I mean experience and talent-wise, well, experience-wise and qualifications-wise, between the departments, the people who work for the auditor and the treasurer and the assessor?
Are you asking me the qualifications of like what it would be to be in the auditor's office compared to the assessor, compared to the treasurer?
Yes, I guess so. I'm asking you, I guess what I'm trying to get to is whether or not the people who work in your office or the people who work in their offices, let's say, have any qualifications to do any of the jobs that the treasurer's office presently does. Do you know that?
I think that when you're hiring somebody, I mean, you're looking for a skill set. I mean, each office, I think, is looking for a certain skill set. And I think that any one of those positions in any of the offices, I mean, especially between the treasurer and the auditor, can be trained. And as far as the assessor goes, I think that there's, I know that they have to have certain training. They have to meet certain requirements with, Department of Revenue. I know they take several classes for that, but I think that if they meet your criteria, that they could fulfill those positions. I do know that.
Go ahead, please.
From working with in the auditor's office, comparing working in Department of Licensing and working in the recording system and working in Eden and comparing that to PAX, definitely PAX is way more complicated than any of those systems. I'm still learning, all the details of that system. It does so much, and there's so much detail in it. We can't, like in any of the other systems, you can go in and drill down and, see what you're looking for. With PAX, you basically, if you want to look at certain things, a lot of it requires having a SQL server written, have a query written so you can extract that information. It's not a lot of it. You can't just go in and run a report and say, oh, here you go. You have to write a query for it so you can get that information. So it's definitely more complicated than any of the other systems I've worked on.
No, Bob, I'm going to move on and I can come
Okay.
back to you if I have time.
All right. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to Tom and then Janet.
Hi, Rhonda. Good to see you.
Hi, Tom.
I'm curious, just in general, with experience you've had now, are there structural changes that a charter review would allow your function to happen better? I mean, it's kind of a general question, but if there's such things that we could change from the org chart or structurally in the county, we'd like to know about those. And so I don't want to put you on the spot and you don't have to answer today, but those are the kinds of things that we're trying to determine.
One of my biggest concerns would be if you were to combine the treasurer with let's say the auditor, I think you lose the checks and balance. There's the accountability, and you have now the same person issuing a warrant, and then you also have that same person redeeming that warrant. And I understand, I heard, in one of Mylene's presentations is that you can have separate duties within that same office. You have your own kind of checks and balances within that office, but each office does that. We do that within our own office. The state auditor's office audits us each year, and they look at the accountability. So each office has to have, dual control within their own office. But that would be my biggest concern, is that the same person issuing that warrant is going to be the same person redeeming that warrant. And I think you need to have the separate offices to keep that dual control in check.
Thank you. Janet?
Hi, Rhonda. Again, thank you for spending some time with us. I have a quick question. It's kind of it's a very specific question. You talked about the receipt of lodging tax funds, and you broke it into the 3 islands: San Juan, Orcas, Lopez. Did San Juan Island include the town of Friday Harbor? Do those amounts include the lodging tax from Friday Harbor? Okay.
I'm trying to think of how it comes across on the state remittance, because it comes in through the state remittance, and I don't believe the town is part of that.
Okay, so that lodging tax is a different amount that comes in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any last questions for Rhonda? Rhonda, thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you do for all of us, and to your full team. You've got an incredible team there too.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Just
Thank
thank you for taking the time to
Really.
to educate us.
It was great.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Okay, we're gonna move on to a brief debrief. We've got 20 minutes left total. We're gonna cut in 10 minutes for public comment. So I want to move into the town halls. So Olivia, could you share that wonderful Excel sheet that you and Catherine compiled? So Olivia, in her spare time, went through notes on the town halls and compiled the different comments we heard. And Catherine put that into an Excel spreadsheet. And so yell at me if you're angry, put up ideas for where new subjects should be assigned as far as subcommittees. And these are suggestions, and I'd like your feedback on these suggestions. And so that's the main thing we want to do over the next 10 minutes. And then also, if there's anything missing on this list that you think came up that we need to assign. Several of the topics that came up, as you'll see when the screen populates, are issues that we're already dealing with, and some are not. So, Olivia did the Excel spreadsheet as well. I didn't realize that. I thought that was okay. Olivia did it all. Olivia is amazing, as we all know.
Yes.
There you go. Thank you, Olivia. So can everybody see that? So if you can scroll up a little bit, Olivia.
All right, I'm at the top. What are you
Maybe
seeing?
scroll down so that we can see the full list.
Here, let me do a different zoom.
It's all right. We can work through it.
Olivia, parts of your screen are getting blocked out too. They're like bars that are showing up.
Yeah,
that's from the.
There we go.
See.
Right in the
Is
middle.
that better? Is that better?
That's better. Now at least it's not in the middle.
Go
of
with
the
that.
Great.
Okay, why don't you just go up so we can see the first one? So we'll just go down this list quickly. So the issue of electronic signature gathering came up. A handful of people talking about that. We believe that should go to the elections committee. The issue of a climate and resiliency commissioner, several people commented on that. We're already discussing that in the climate and environment committee. Ranked choice voting, both evenings. Very practical conversation about this subject. That also in the elections committee. The build out analysis, including water inventory, climate environment.
Good.
All right. You're the only committee chair so far saying yay.
Well, that's
let's see. This one's already in the elected and appointed. The ombudsperson, already in the operations committee. There's me typing too fast.
Olivia, can you enlarge the screen size? We'll see less, but better able to read what we're looking at. Thank you. Oh, that's interesting. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Green waste, climate and environment committee. Let's see. What was this one? I didn't assign that. I don't remember that one.
Me either.
Yeah. Could I say something to that?
Oh, David, you're with us. Welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah, please
no,
go ahead.
No, that is a person who is concerned about political parties endorsing candidates, and they want to, they're in nonpartisan races. So that person wanted to.
Yeah, that
have
was Leith Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
okay. So that's an important topic and not an area for our jurisdiction.
Correct. I agree.
But it could go to, well, it's not within within our jurisdiction. It's also not within the state constitution. Parties can endorse even in nonpartisan elections. But I think it's an important point, but it's not in our scope. The Visitors Bureau is already in the governance committee. The idea of individual islands having more autonomy or their own governance structure is already in the governance committee. The preamble and the rights of nature is already in the process committee. Public records already in operations. Why did I do this twice? Okay. So this was a question I had. So I believe already in the process committee we're discussing rights of nature. Is that correct?
We're working on.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Bill of Rights. The reason it's in there twice, Kevin, is because one's the preamble and the other is a separate Bill of Rights. And we are attacking both
they're both
things.
in the process committee.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Vision statement is in process committee to reflect the county code.
It isn't presently, but it's,
no, I'm
it's
saying
something.
that's a suggestion.
Yes, I think we could take that on.
The issue of a voice for youth, I felt that would fit best with justice and equity. Law enforcement more involved in the community, justice and equity. And somewhere in there, I'm going to keep raising the issue of cops on bikes and cops walking and actually getting out of their cars. Equal access to health and mental health is in governance, but I had a question of if that should be the access issue. The equal access issue for me feels like a justice and equity, but we already have some of this discussion within governance. So I wanted to raise that with everybody, raise everything here that we're talking about with everybody. And then equal access to the budget process is governance, and the Earth Charter, again, is process. So anybody have any reflections on those? Any disagreements with my random picks? I see Dick's hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have possibly more than we can deal with in the issues we put on the list ourselves. And my question is, on some of these issues, if one person raised it, are we really going to take it up and deal with it? We will never get to the end of this by mid-May or early May. It's just, I worry about it. It's too many issues.
I feel like the short answer is yes. We asked people for public input. They gave it to us. We shouldn't disregard it. So frankly, there's a handful of new ideas here. If there were 30 new ideas and that pushes us to December, bummer, but I really feel that we can't have a town hall and ask for public input and then say, oh, that's too much public input. And so there's one thing. The second thing is, I also think that the subcommittees can take some of these on, and like a couple of them there, they may not be even within the purview of the charter. As with some other issues that have already come up in subcommittees, you may have one or two commissioners who like an idea and the rest of the subcommittee or the rest of the commission doesn't. And at some point in the very near term, we need to just shut those down and say, okay, we're moving on. We're done with that. Thanks for sharing. We're on to the next. And so while new items continuing to come in is going to be difficult for us, I think with this group from the town halls, I think we at least need to spend a few moments in the subcommittees reflecting upon them. And it may be that we make a decision that we want to move on and not take that on, but I think it deserves merit of conversation. So I had Bill, I see your hand. There was somebody else before Bill though.
I had my hand up, but I put it down again.
Okay, but I wanted to ask Dick, I want this to be a dialogue. This is not a monarchy here, so.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm just saying, and I'm fine with taking a look at it in the subcommittee. I just want us to be realistic about what we're biting off.
Totally. Okay, well,
Susie, hi Eric, how are you? So do I understand that you've suggested that we should lunch together?
Yeah, I don't know what that was. Okay, Bill, please.
I think that we do owe a response on every single issue. It might not result in a charter change, but I think we do need to put either in our findings or in some report back to the people why we did or did not respond to something, because some of them are reasons are legal. I think we have every excuse except we didn't have time. I don't think that's an excuse.
Okay, and it is 5:50, so I'm going to open it up for public comment and circle back to this subject matter. So I'm going to suspend this conversation until after public comment. So is there anybody here from the public who would like to speak to us this evening? Alexandra, I see your screen. Did you want to speak again?
Yep, I just wanted to say quickly that I put in the chat a link to the document that Liz Lafferty was asking about relative to, and I missed the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry, so I don't have the context. Sorry, my name's Alexandra Gayak. I don't have the context for where the meeting started, but it was a cost of community services report that was done back in 2004 that demonstrated that in San Juan County, the cost of residential development was $1.32 per dollar that was coming in tax revenues. So I put the link to that document so people could read it and see what it had to say about whatever it was you were talking about.
Alexandra, I had a question in the chat. That document's almost 20 years old. Is there an update to that document?
I'm not aware of an update. You can see who did it.
Okay.
And talk with them to see if they have any more information.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
We looked into it at the state level, Janet, 3 or 4 years, so more recently, and it was regional. It wasn't just San Juan County, but our region, and it looked like by mining down on the data, San Juan County had gotten actually much worse. So, so any other members of the public that would like to speak to us? Anyone else? Okay. With that, we're going to close public comment and go back to our previous discussion on the subcommittee assignments from the town halls. And so I have David Dellendorf and then Liz and then Jane and then Anne Marie.
Kevin, you're probably already going to do this, but I encourage you to keep that spreadsheet updated as we hold additional town halls, but also with regard to emails that come in. There was an email I saw that I think came into the CRC in total from Frank Penwell on the issue of elected versus appointed. And I think those should be added in there and keep this list updated and make sure we don't miss anything because it doesn't get on this list.
Yeah, that email was shared with the commission. Somebody asked if it should be read, and I turned that down. If somebody supplies us a 3 or 4 page written document, we can read it and don't need to have it read aloud. But that was comments on something we're already discussing. If there
Right.
were an email that came in and said, here's a new subject I think you should discuss, then I would take that under consideration for assigning to a committee, just like we have from the town hall.
Well, I understand that, but you still should put it on the list. Because we're putting things on the list that are already being handled that we so note. And so that Frank Penwell email fits into that category.
No, David, the list you got was specifically from the town halls, what was discussed as a, just so you could see an overview. And then where there were new, so I listed where we were
So
already.
I understand. I understand.
And then where there's new items, I said, here's a suggestion for an assignment.
Yeah.
So that's what we have. Frank's email is great. Already being discussed, and his opinion has been taken into consideration by everybody. I hope everybody read it. Does that get at your point, David?
Sort of, but I'll drop it. Thank you.
Okay, I have Liz and then Jane.
Sorry, Kevin, just to sort of reinforce what David's saying, though, I mean, I think that gentleman would probably want to know how the commission handled his comment, right? That came in via Olivia to all of us to look at. So I'm just, maybe that's what David's talking about a little bit.
It is.
How are we tracking the public input that's coming in like that in the form of an email? Another woman sent an email after the town hall as well.
Yeah, so we are trying to, I have sent a couple responses to people, but we will formalize that. I think this is a good suggestion. This is a good reminder for me that we need to formalize that process. Olivia, I see your hand. We're going to get to you in 4 people.
It's
Liz,
about this specifically.
okay, but hang on. Liz, you were next. I mean, Jane, you were next. Did you have something else, or were you commenting on this?
Yeah, no, I had something else. I'm not sure if I was next or if someone else was, but.
Okay, Olivia, why don't you go ahead and reply to this then?
We can easily keep track of just public comment on a separate list. I'm happy to compile that data. So I had multiple people just direct email me. The one that I shared with everyone is including one of those. Others I felt were a little, maybe I shouldn't. So if everyone wants me to compile all of the data that was, if you had anyone direct email you specifically, forward it to me. I can create a whole list, and then everyone has access to that list of public comment. I think that it would be good for us to differentiate what was at town halls and what's public comment.
Olivia, why don't you and I circle back on that? But I think we should start compiling that to make sure at the very least that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, but unlike some other entities within our county, we're actually going to let people know that we heard them. And even if it's just, we got your comment and we're taking it under consideration and we've assigned it to this subcommittee, or it may be an email saying, hey, this has already been discussed. We've shared your input with the full commission, but something. And Janet, what are you saying that includes my name? Oh, what I just said. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to Jane and then Anne Marie and then Maureen C.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So just on the issue of equal access to health, mental health and housing, that was that issue that was mentioned in the spreadsheet. And you had a question, Kevin, whether it should go to governance for justice and equity. My first comment is, I don't know what that comment was about. I don't recall it enough to say, but my second point is that something that's better for preamble kind of thing? Because the direction our Justice and Equity Committee group is going, I don't know that we're going to be embracing all manner of those kinds of services. But I mean, we can take that one as one to consider. But anyway, so that's just a comment on that one. I'd like to hear from maybe Bob, who's working on the process side, if he has a thought on that. And also maybe governance, somebody on governance has a feeling about that one. The related comment I wanted to make a bit to the overlap that's happening a bit is one that I've already mentioned to Bob, and that is that Bill of Rights discussion that's underway in the process committee. And I'm going to repeat myself again. If Bill of Rights that you guys are talking about relates to human rights, we need to be, and I think Kyle is in that group, but we need to be abreast of what you guys are talking about. So justice and equity is just informed of those discussions. And finally, I guess the last thing I wanted to relay was a conversation with Olivia about one of the committees keeping track of the issues they're working on, and then deliberations that they're having, and then sort of in a final column, what was done, and this is more than minutes. This is really taking the minutes and populating into a spreadsheet. So there's consistency across how we're all, following a process of issue, deliberation, and decision prior to going back to the commission, so that there's, just some order to how we're dealing with our issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And I will say, actually, I'm going to put out there that I'm going to request, even though I hate this, that we're going to go 7 minutes over, because we've got 1 minute until 6. So if everybody's okay with that. And then we've got 3 more people. And I have one thing I wanted to say in response to Jane. 4 more. Sorry, Liz. I was hoping that our reports weekly from the subcommittees to the full commission would allow the other commissioners who are not on different subcommittees to weigh in on different subjects. I'm not sure that is going to work. And I am personally experiencing it, because I was going to jump onto the governance committee, but Sharon beat me to it. And they're at 8 now. And there are some issues being discussed in the governance committee that I absolutely want to weigh in on. And so I'm trying to think through how I'm going to do that, because I want my voice heard in on some of those discussions. And I don't want that full committee to come to consensus on something, and then it comes to the full commission and I'm trying to push back on something that a group has spent weeks talking about. And so I'm thinking about that. If others have other ideas, not for now, but if you want to call me or email me, I'd love your thoughts on that. And it may be something that we talked about early on, was that some of these discussions come back to the full commission, and we just put them on the full agenda. And so I want to think that through. If others have ideas, please call me, but it's something I'm thinking about, is how do we make sure the full commission can engage on different topics when they're not on the subcommittee? So with that, we're going to go to Anne Marie, Olivia, Maureen, and then Liz. And I think that's it. Oh, Bob again. Okay.
So my comment mostly has to do with an email that I sent to Kevin and Olivia and Catherine. And I think one of the things that has come out in this time of pandemic where everybody's Zooming is that some members of our community have been able to easily participate in the process because they don't have to get on a ferry and go to a meeting. And this email, the person actually is the chair of one of our government commissions, said she really thought it would be a good idea for the charter to look at how we could make sure that this level of accessibility to the governance process was put in place. And I just didn't want her to get a reply back that said, thank you very much, we'll see you later, because I think it does fit into several of the conversations that like Maureen is having and Dave is having, and different audiences or groups here are having about the public and the public process. And I think that this is an activity that has been generated during this very, very tough time, which has really allowed a lot of people in our community to still stay abreast of what's happening. So I hope you will pay attention to that request.
Anne Marie, thank you for that. And I think I had forgotten that email, actually. We need to assign that to a subcommittee. I think it's a very important topic. And I think I'm brain dead almost. I've got probably 3 minutes mental strength left. So I don't know if that's operations or governance, but one of those most likely, but we do need to assign it. So we'll circle back on that and let the chair of that subcommittee know. And if they have a problem, we can talk about it. So Olivia, I had you, did I have you again? Or you already went?
Real quick, that is also a topic that has been brought up at other commissioner meetings for different boards, and it's a hot topic. So thank you, Anne Marie, for bringing that up.
Maureen?
Thank you. I have a couple of things to say. I really appreciate what Anne Marie just said. That's so very, very important. But I always had in my mind that somehow we would end up with things we didn't get to, or we we didn't have the scope to do that needs to be organized in a way that we can say to the council, you've got to do this, and we have to have some way of pushing it forward at them. I'm not sure how to do that, but I've been thinking about it. There were two items that stood out to me like a boulder from the town halls, which I totally loved, and they were the ranked choice voting and the build-out analysis, which have to do with a lot of things, including growth. And I thought they were well represented by the public, and we don't have them on any of these lists. And I don't know whether they fit in or it's more than we can do, but I think they're really important.
Well, they're on the, I'm sorry if I'm not tracking. Maybe I'm already brain dead. They're on the lists that we just assigned. So the screen that
I didn't see ranked choice voting.
Yeah, ranked choice voting and the assessment are have both been assigned to different subcommittees now.
Yes.
I didn't see the build out analysis. Was it just
Yeah,
under...
that was on the spreadsheet as well that Olivia just shared when she shared the screen a moment ago.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, Liz, and then Bob, and then good night.
Are there restrictions or considerations in who and how we might share that town hall meeting list and how it was assigned?
I don't think there should be restrictions. This is already a public meeting, so we've just shared it. And so it will be on the website shortly. And Patty, I see you, so I'll put you after Bob. And so there are no restrictions, and I think that we should share that. And I will look to someone else to help me, but I think that basically we're going to craft an email that says, you know, for the people who of record who actually gave us comments, right back to them and say, thank you for your comment. Your issue's is going to be taken up by this subcommittee.
So my thought had to do with the people that we put out invitations and encourage them to come to follow up with a copy of this and some either letter from the whole group or individually just saying, hey, we appreciate that you got this out to your group and we really value that you showed up. Here's what's happened with that information.
Actually, so that's an interesting point that I think it's a great point. My only hesitation is I don't necessarily want to take it on, but I think I will. I think an email going out, a public statement going out saying, thank you to the, over 100 people who participated in our town halls. They were very productive. Here's what we heard. And here's where these issues have been assigned. Actually, this is a really good idea. Thank you, Liz. And then we say, here's where these issues have been assigned. And then we say, and here's the chairperson of that subcommittee. And so if you want to weigh in, here's when they meet and when that discussion is taking place. I think that's a great idea. And if somebody wants to draft that email for me, I'll send it.
Excellent.
But that's, Liz, thank you. That's a really good idea. Bob and then Patty.
First, a response to Jane. Yes, the process committee is looking at the Bill of Rights, both for human beings and for nature, possibly in 2 sections. We still are hashing that part out. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the process committee has as one of its charges to look at what the very thing we're talking about, what the public is interested in us addressing. So the next town halls that occur will probably be coming too late to deal with that, won't they? Won't we have to, in the next town halls, talk to them about where we are on subjects and what they think about where we are on the progress of those subjects? If we're going to have town halls that actually introduce new subjects, we got to do them right away. We got to do them a couple of weeks from now.
No, we just did. I do not anticipate us. I am not planning on us doing more town halls until the end when we are sharing, exactly like you said, we're sharing our recommendations and asking for comment on those recommendations. If members of the public want to introduce new subjects, they should be encouraged to attend a CRC meeting. So during public comment right now, if somebody said, I really want you guys to tackle this, then we're going to take it under consideration. Or
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, or they can attend a subcommittee meeting and do the same thing, but we're not going to have another round of town halls anytime.
I'm with you on that, Kevin. Okay. What about another device, putting out a press release or something like that that says and it could be in combination with what you were talking about, where you talk about where we are on subjects, putting out a press release and saying, if there are other matters you members of the public want us to deal with, let us know immediately by contacting us here, because we're going to have to shut down consideration of subjects. What about that?
Janet Burnell suggested a press release format instead of just a letter going out to those who commented, which I think is a great idea combined with what Liz suggested earlier. So what I will do is work on we collectively, not me, we collectively are going to put together a press release that's going to go out in the next, let's say by the end of the week, that can say, thank you for everybody attending. And here's what we heard. Here's how it's been assigned. If you have a new idea, you need to attend a CRC meeting. We're going to go to Patty, and Patty gets the last comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Over. So Patty, it's all you.
Okay. Hey, that's great. I was expecting to give a little blurb about our initiative and referendum committee, but since we didn't have time to talk about committees, I was holding off to say that we also were at least considering electronic signature gathering as a future possibility. And I know you had put that up in elections, but it could also come to our committee also. Just saying.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if you guys want that and you're already considering it, I'm fine with that. That's what that is for. So.
We don't know if it's a possibility, but we want to at least consider it and see what, you know, the full commission says about that.
Okay. So why don't, unless others object, Dave, I see your hand. Give me a second to finish the sentence. Unless others object, you know, maybe if Patty's committee was already thinking about that, that seems fine to me. David, are you commenting on this?
No, on something just earlier, just
Okay. So does anybody have a response on that? Is everybody okay with Patty's committee taking on that?
Yes, fine.
Awesome. Yeah, my feeling is always if someone steps up and says, I'll do that, then we let them. Okay, David, we're 3 minutes over, so why not go 4? Go ahead.
Okay. I think we need to have another town hall. I think you're going to put out a press release. Most people did not know there was a first town hall, and they're going to see the press release and they're going to say, aha. So I'm going to, I missed that one.
And they can send things.
Well, again, I think just because new subjects might come up, I don't think that's the reason not to have another town hall. But it could be done in a couple of weeks. It doesn't, you know, we don't want to wait till June. But and if that's my opinion, and I stand by it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'm going to do in the press release is put out a statement encouraging people to attend our meetings. And if instead of 10 minutes, we have to take 30 or 40 or 50 minutes, awesome. I would love to have that sort of citizen engagement in this process. But I do not plan on scheduling another town hall until toward the end of our process. If others feel the same way as David, please email me and let me know. And then again, I'm not a dictator here. I'm just throwing out suggestions. So if the bulk of this commission feels differently and wants to have another town hall next week, let me know and help schedule it. Okay, with that, I would love a motion to adjourn. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, very much. We'll
Great
see
meeting.
you next week, if not before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Right. Well, Olivia, we lost Kevin again.
I know. And do you want to click the stop recording?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you.